What's up guys, Mike here with King of Avalon Follower, doing a video that has taken me a long time to be able to make with a certain degree of accuracy that I feel comfortable actually producing the video. So we are going to talk about troop formations, and it is a very complex, difficult subject to talk about because there's not a lot of information that is put out by the game creators or the developers. And so what I really have is just trial and error and experience really to go off of this. So I'm going to do my best to talk about the subject within the game, but ultimately I am going to have to at some point switch out of in-game footage and go. I drew up kind of a picture to kind of illustrate exactly how the troop formation works because it's very confusing. So first thing first, let's go ahead and let's look. Let's take a look down here at the parade grounds and let's look at the types of troops we have. So we know we've got infantry, cavalry, bowmen, and siege. Now, people always ask me how many of what type of troops should I send, or how do you know how to defeat someone else if they've got cavalry and bowmen and siege and traps? How do you tweak and twist your troop formations to be able to take somebody else out and lose the least amount possible on your side while still getting all the kills? Good questions, very difficult. And again, this is going to be a longer video, so I'm sorry, but bear with me. I think it's important information. Excuse me. So we've got infantry, cavalry, bowmen, and siege. Within those four categories, we have different types. We have warriors, which you're going to have as T8s, T6, and you're going to have spearmen, which you're going to have as T7s, T1s, and of course every level of infantry will either fall into the warrior category or spearman category. For cavalry, we've got heavy cavalry, which is going to be your T8s, T6s, even your T1s. And then you have light cavalry, which are your T7s and your T5s and even T9s. Bowmen, we've got archers, and we have crossbowmen. Now, the interesting thing about bowmen is with every other, with the cavalry and with the infantry, you know, T1 cavalry is heavy cavalry, T2 is light cavalry, and then back to heavy cavalry, and then back to light cavalry. Same thing with infantry. You go spearman, warrior, spearman, warrior, spearman, warrior as you go up in ascending level. With bowmen, it's different. T8, T7, these are both archers. T5, T6, let me make sure I got that right. Yeah, T9, T6, T5, those are all crossbowmen. T8, T7, T4, T1, these are all archers, okay? So you've got two different types of bowmen. And then lastly, siege, you have towers and you have distance siege. So doom towers are going to be, you know, or excuse me, your towers are going to be your T8, your T5, your T3s, your dragon rams, that kind of stuff. Your distant siege are going to be your trebuchets and your catapults, that kind of stuff. T7, T6, T9. Excuse me again. So the first thing you have to do is understand that there are different types of different classes within each category. So there's two classes in every single one. And real quick, you can always go to any of the buildings, click the building right here, click your train button, and you can see warriors, that's T8, spearmen, T7, warriors, T6, spearmen, T5, warriors, T4, and it'll lay it out for you so you can sit there and know exactly what you're making. Now, why have I spent 5 minutes talking about all this and trying to describe to you the different categories? Because when you set up a troop formation, it's very important. Most people would normally think, and I think it's a natural thought to have because I had it, most people would think, okay, if I go to attack an enemy and I want to attack him, I want to send all of my strongest troops, my T8 or T9 or T10 or whatever you have that's your strongest. I want to send all of my strongest troops. That'll bring them down. But ultimately, what you have to consider is how the formations work. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at some battle reports that I have. So I've got one rally that we're going to look at, and I've got one big battle that I did where I wiped out another guy. So the interesting thing, the thing you need to keep in mind for a rally is you also have to consider the factor of, you know, if one person lost more troops than the other, is it because one person has much better gear and is a higher level and higher troops? So the rally isn't quite as much of a controlled report to look at, but it gives us some useful information. So let's go ahead and start by coming down here, and we're going to take a look. Actually, you know what? Let's take a look with my individual battles. So you can see right here, I killed 257,000 of this guy's troops, and I lost 13,000. So we're going to go ahead and scroll down. We're going to look at the actual report. Now, before we go into this, when I scouted this guy, he had almost no traps. So I sent no siege. You only need to send siege if you are attacking someone's castle and you are attacking, and they have traps, okay? Now, realistically, yes, your siege troops can get kills against other units, but you have more effective troops to get kills against other units than siege. Siege attack traps, or, in the case of towers, the siege literally just kills itself on the trap. It gets a kill by killing the trap, but it doesn't do much beyond that. So, there's no siege sent here because the guy had very little traps. I sent all units. So let's take a look at the breakdown. Now, you're going to see right here that my T8s, I sent, oh gosh, I don't even want to do the math on this. I sent something like 13,000 T8 infantry. Okay, I sent another like 3,000 T7 infantry and then 300 T1 infantry. Now you would think, okay, well obviously your T1 infantry are your weakest, so they're all going to die. And your T7s are weaker than your T8s, so they're all going to die. And your T8s are the strongest, so most likely if you do have some that survive, it's going to be your T8s. Okay, that's what you would think. That is not the case, and I'm going to explain that later. You can see right here that my T7s and T1s, no losses, no wounded, all survived. However, my T8s, I lost 8,000 troops right there and wounded another 2,400, okay? Now let's move down to cavalry. Now in the case of cavalry, okay, I have T8 cavalry, I lost 0 and I was wounded 0. My T7 cavalry, on the other hand, I lost almost 2,000 and wounded another 500. Then we go down and you look and you see my T1s and my T6, which you would think are weaker than T7s. How come I didn't lose any there? Why am I just losing T7s? It doesn't make sense. This is why the different classes within a group matter. Because with your cavalry, you've got heavy cavalry and light cavalry. Infantry, you've got warriors, and you have spearmen. And I'm going to show it illustrated on a little crudely drawn picture that I made, but it's going to make this much more understandable. So I want you to visualize an actual army, okay? Think to Lord of the Rings, I don't know, maybe Star Wars, you got stormtroopers or clone troopers marching. Visualize an army, right? There's row after row after row after row of people or cavalry or bowmen. So what we want to do is we want to visualize how your army would actually lay out. And I know that the ads that King of Avalon puts online at the beginning of all the YouTube videos are nothing like the actual gameplay. And I have no idea why they do it. It's completely unprofessional, misleading, and ridiculous. And I think the game is fun enough that they don't have to lie with their ads. But for whatever reason they do, they do. But ultimately, envision an army, okay? And now I want you to think the very forward-most units in your army, the people at the very front, if you're playing chess, okay, these are the pawns, are going to be your infantry. Now, how does your infantry stack up? The frontmost people at the very front that are first going to come in contact with the enemy and fight are going to be your warriors. So in this case, my T8 infantry are my warriors. If I had had some T6 infantry, which are also warriors, in this matchup right here, if I'd had some T6 infantry, I would have also taken losses there. So your warriors are going to stand at the front. Within those warriors, you're going to have your T2s, your T4s, your T6s, and your T8s. And it's going to line up just like that. As you start to take losses, you're going to lose your weakest ones first. So if I'd had T2 infantry, I would have lost them before the T4s and those before the T6s. And I would have lost those T6 maulers before my T8 sovereign swordsman. Now in this case, I didn't have any of those in here. I just had the sovereign swordsman. So the swordsman took the loss. Now, my spearmen stand directly behind my sovereign swordsman, directly behind them. If the enemy manages to kill all of my sovereign swordsmen or all of my warrior class infantry, my spearmen infantry are going to be the next ones attacked. You remember, your infantry are going to get hit before your cavalry does and before your bowmen. So, if they'd killed all of my sovereign swordsmen, then they would have began to dig into and start killing my spearmen. If they managed to make it through killing all of my spearmen, that's where we end up going into cavalry. Now, here's another interesting thing that kind of is a little bit confusing. I lost cavalry, but I didn't lose all my infantry. So how come I lost some cavalry, but didn't lose infantry? And again, it's kind of a confusing thing. If we go down and we take a look at this individual, okay, he does have some traps. You're going to notice that he has a majority of pitfall, which are traps that kill cavalry. He had some traps that killed infantry, and you can see where he killed some infantry. And he also has some traps that kill bowmen, and you can see where he got some kills against bowmen. But the majority of his traps were traps that were designed to kill cavalry. So that's going to explain why back up here, when we're taking a look at this, why I lost a significant amount of cavalry and had some wounded. You can see right there about 2,500. But I didn't eat up all my infantry. And again, I lost a few bowmen. Those are going to be due to his bowman traps as well. So after you have, after your warriors have been taken out, then your spearmen, you're going to move into light cavalry. And so you can see here, even though I had T1 cavalry, those are T1 heavy cavalry. Heavy cavalry like T1, T6, and T8 stand behind light cavalry like T7 and T5. So you're going to lose your light cavalry and then your heavy cavalry. Now, if the enemy ends up killing all of your infantry and they somehow manage to get through all of your light cavalry and your heavy cavalry, then they're going to move into the bowmen. Now, in my case, I only have archers, okay? I have no crossbowmen that are being sent. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at another battle report. We're going to go over here to a rally from a couple of months ago, okay? A rally that Conquest, the famous, launched, and we're going to take a look at that. Now, how do bowmen and archers, or excuse me, how do archers and crossbowmen stack up? I'll tell you. Archers stand in front of crossbowmen, okay? And here's how we're going to prove it. Let's go take a look at Conquest down here, okay? Now, Conquest is the strongest person in this rally, so he lost almost no troops, okay? So it's difficult to show with certainty that, well, I mean, Conquest didn't lose any heavy crossbowmen, but he did lose some short bowmen, but, you know, I mean, they're really weak. So bear with me, we'll keep moving along. Ultimately, the archers, which is what a short bowman is, stands in front of the crossbowmen, okay? Now, then you're going to ask yourself, well, you know, I mean, none of these died either, so how can we be certain? We'll scroll down, we'll take a look at someone else's. So the only examples of crossbowmen in this rally are Conquest and Pepsi. Conquest lost 0 crossbowmen, but he did lose archers. Now let's go take a look at some other people that were involved in the rally. Okay, Stabzi lost a bunch of archers, and those were level 7 archers. Sir Timmy lost a bunch of level 7 archers. Me, I lost... looks like I didn't lose any. And again, remember, this was a rally victory, so we're going to lose less. And my archers are going to be stronger than someone else's archers who's lower level than me, okay? So you're seeing those T7 archers getting wiped out, but Conquest and I both didn't lose any of our T8s. So we're going to go down, keep scrolling down. Again, more T7 archers. Those lower level archers, because 7s and 8s are both archers. Those lower level archers are going to be lost first. So you're going to see your T7 archers start to die against other people while your T8 archers continue living on. Castile, same thing. Didn't lose any of his T8s. Did lose a bunch of his T7s. Okay. Was this Pepsi right? Nope. Axe to mouth. Vegeta. Let me get down. There she is. Okay, so Pepsi, the only other person who sent crossbowmen. Remember, crossbowmen are T5. She lost 0. Now, she didn't send that many. She only sent 74, but she lost 0. Pepsi, you can see right here, compared to many of the other people, is much weaker. Her dragon stats are weaker, her hero stats are weaker, her dragon level is weaker, and she's obviously majority T7 and under troops. So, the crossbowmen stand behind the archers. So that, again, same thing we've done before. When you're sending your troops out there, your archers are going to get killed before it digs into your crossbowmen, okay? And last but not least are going to be the siege troops. Now, the siege troops are really kind of an interesting unit that I touched on a little bit. Now, I have been in an attack where we attacked someone else and we lost. We lost a rally against another castle. And a bunch of people sent T7, T9 distant siege. And what those distant siege do is, you know, as they are illustrated in the game, they're launching catapults that destroy traps. So what happens is it's kind of difficult to visualize, but imagine they never even touch the other enemy's army or other enemy's castle. So even if you lose a battle, oftentimes you're gonna have your distant siege survive. However, the game creators decided to make it, you just have to visualize an actual battle where those distant siege, you're going to be 300 yards or a few football fields away from the actual battle, just launching stuff. And so when you lose, they don't end up dying because they weren't attacked; they were attacking. And I know this is kind of difficult, and I may be wrong, but again, this is coming from personal experience and from the best of my ability to understand based off the battle reports. Your distant siege, a lot of the times, are not going to be killed or lost. However, your siege towers, your doom towers, your dragon towers, that kind of stuff, your dragon rams and your battering rams, those are going to be up on the front lines where the infantry is, right? Those are ramming up against the castle wall, however you want to envision it. And those doom towers are going to die. Now, they're not going to die necessarily before your infantry, because I've had battle reports where I have attacked somebody and I lost way more infantry than I ever lost doom towers. Mostly what they're going to do is they're just going to kind of just throw themselves against traps and hopefully kill the traps so you don't lose your infantry. But ultimately, the siege is a very kind of difficult unit to understand, and I still don't understand it completely 100% myself. So usually when I make a troop formation, which we're going to go to next, I send no towers, and I send just distant siege if I'm attacking somebody else who has a lot of traps. I want to kill those traps, and then I let my infantry kind of take the rest of them. The other reason I don't send doom towers that often, or other battering ram type units, is because they're so incredibly slow. They slow your march down a ridiculous amount, and if you look at some of my videos on troop formations where I talk about the speed of your marches, you'll see how doom towers, I mean, they're slugs. It's terrible. So let's go ahead and look at my troop formation. Now, I haven't really reformatted this since I what am I trying to say? Or since I leveled up and have increased my march capacity, and since I lost some troops in my last battle, I need to reformat it. So, first things first, if I'm attacking somebody else, what I want to look at is I want to consider how many infantry they have, how many cavalry they have, and how many bowmen they have, and what siege troops they have. Do they have traps? So, this right here, you're going to see that I have a whole combination of different levels of units, because what I'm hoping, I don't know why there isn't any selected of that, what I'm hoping is that I lose less of my higher tier troops and lose more of my lower tier troops. So that's why I've got some of my spearmen down here, which now I know that the warriors are going to die first no matter what, so I may as well just get rid of those spearmen, train myself some T2 troops, and place those in there instead. I'm going to throw some maulers on here, right? So I lose this T6 warriors as opposed to my more valuable and more difficult to make T8 warriors. Don't pay attention to the numbers right now. They're kind of wonky. If you're attacking someone else, you want to send a good, something like 15,000, 10 to 15,000 infantry, okay? So I'm going to send a bunch of those T8s right there. I'm going to send a bunch of these T6s right here. I know these are going to be the first things to get wiped out, okay? Now, I'm hoping they don't get wiped out, but they might. So I'm going to also send in some of my T7 infantry. I'm going to send in 3,000 right here, okay? Knowing that these T7s are not going to get killed unless all my T8s get killed, okay? So I want to make my troop power as strong as I can. So I'm only sending in a few of the T7 infantry as a kind of just a precautionary measure, just in case I lose, I take more damage in this battle than I thought. So that's what I'm going to do there. Next thing I do is I'm going to take a look at my cavalry. Now again, your cavalry has a higher attack than infantry, has a lower defense than infantry. It also has a lower attack than bowmen, but a higher defense than your bowmen. So you're really sending in your cavalry to mitigate any other damage. Hey, if they get through my infantry, I want to have a decent amount of cavalry with some good defense, so that way my bowmen, which are my damage units, right? Anytime you look at a battle report, what unit gets the most kills? It's going to be your bowmen, okay? They're doing the most damage. They're standing further back, and again, envision just launching arrows up over, wiping out the enemy army, okay? So I'm going to look at my heavy cavalry, which I know is going to be behind my light cavalry. So I'm throwing in my heavy cavalry in large numbers, okay? Well, not too large a number, but in a larger number than And apparently I'm being attacked. I will be right back. Oh, never mind. Fallen Knights. Well, interesting. Okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and ignore that. Boom. Let's jump right back into where we were. Okay, so I'm going to look at my heavy cavalry. Dang it, I didn't save that. Crud. That was dumb of me. Let me drop that. And we're going to drop some cavalry, some bowmen. Slide the infantry back over where I had it, about 10,000. Okay. Perfect. Alrighty. So, my cavalry, I want to have a decent amount of cavalry because they do have a higher attack than infantry, but they're also going to add to my overall troop power and defense stat. But I don't want to put too much on there because I know my bowmen are getting the majority of kills. So, decent amount of light cavalry. You can see right here, I'm going to throw 2,000. These are the ones that are going to die first, preserving my heavy cavalry, which are more expensive. Next, I'm going to look at bowmen. Now, my T8 bowmen do significantly more damage than my T7 bowmen, but I know my T7 bowmen will die first, which is okay because they're easier to make. So I'm going to put a lower amount, around 5,000. Okay, my T8s, I'm going to nearly max them out. You can see right here my march count is maxed out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to consider to myself, does the enemy have traps? If they do, I want to send some units that are going to get some kills against traps and make it so that I lose less infantry. So right here, this formation I'm setting up, if the enemy does have traps, I'm going to go ahead and leave about 7,000 right there. Now I'm going to go up here. I'm going to drop down my overall bowman number down to about 70,000 because I want to add these maulers, which are going to keep my T8 infantry from dying. And I'm going to add some of these men-at-arms cavalry, which if they do manage to get through my T7 light cavalry, they'll then kill my T6 cavalry and leave my more expensive T8s unharmed. Okay. Again, these mounted spearmen right here, these are going to die with the other light cavalry, so I'm just going to throw in about 1,000 of those. Call it good. Archers, looks like I've only got one, so it doesn't really matter. And then if you end up with a few thousand left over, a few hundred, my recommendation is to consider how many traps does the enemy have, how many bowmen does the enemy have? Does the enemy have an extraordinarily large amount of archers? If they do, they're going to do more damage against you. Could be in your best interest to send more infantry, okay, or at least more cavalry, one of the two, okay. So I would probably say, hey, they got a lot of bowmen, I'm going to send more infantry, or maybe they don't have a lot of bowmen, they just have a lot of infantry themselves. If they have a lot of infantry and not that many bowmen, you go ahead and drop your infantry down, send more of your own bowmen, because those bowmen are going to stand back and lay waste to the enemy's infantry, allowing you to secure a victory. So I'm going to go ahead and save this march right here. This is what I would do if the enemy has traps, okay? Now let's say I'm attacking somebody on a resource gathering tile, okay? They have absolutely zero traps, okay? They got nothing. They may have some siege there, but they have no traps whatsoever for me to worry about. How are we going to set up our formation in this regard? It's going to be very similar. You're going to do essentially the exact same thing. You're just not going to send any siege troops. So, again, you're looking at their army. Let's say they've got 100,000 units. For whatever reason, they have 100,000 units sitting on a gathering tile, okay? In that 100,000 units, they've got 10,000 infantry, they've got 30,000 cavalry, and they've got 60,000 bowmen, okay? That's a lot of bowmen, okay? Now, how are we going to take them out? Obviously, you only want to attack the person if you're stronger than they are. Maybe they've got lower level troops, or you know that they're a low level castle, or they don't have very good gear, or they've got 100,000 and you can send 150. So you know you're going to win. If you go toe-to-toe with somebody, it's a very dangerous thing because the game is designed to kind of favor you when you're playing defensively, and if it came down to a tiebreaker, it's going to usually be on the in favor of the individual who is playing defensively. So keep that in mind. So if you do fight somebody who has a similar power to you or similar troop number or something like that to you, be aware that usually the game is going to favor a tiebreaker or something close to it on the defensive player's end. All right. This video is getting way too long. I'm going to go through it real quick. So I'm fighting somebody with 10,000 infantry, 30,000 cavalry, and 60,000 bowmen, okay? I'm going to send myself probably 20,000 infantry, and then I'm going to send a good, healthy amount of cavalry as well, because I want to be able to I want to be able to take into consideration that there's going to possibly be some damage that comes with it. And then I'm going to send as many bowmen as I can because I know my bowmen are going to do a significant amount of damage. Now, you can send all of your strongest level troops. There's nothing against sending just your strongest level troops and not mixing and matching a bunch of lower levels. You just have to consider that that means you're going to guarantee lose your strongest level troops. And you know anytime you fight somebody, you are going to lose at least some troops. So that's where the thought comes in of, well, okay, let's see here. We know how the formation works. Let's go ahead and let's jump into mixing and matching it a little bit. So that's where I'd recommend, you know you're going to lose some archers, throw some of your T7 archers on there so that you're going to lose those and not your T8s, which take longer to train. You know that you're going to lose some of your infantry, so why don't we go ahead and throw some of the T6 warriors on there so you lose those instead of your T8s, which are more valuable and take more time to train. But ultimately, no traps. And there's no traps, so you don't need to send any siege. Just make it purely units. So that, and then light cavalry, I know I'm going to lose some cavalry, so let's go ahead and send some light cavalry. We'll send 2,000 of them. That's what I'll do right there. The rest I will fill up with bowmen so that I can get a lot of kills. That would be my formation if I was taking somebody out on a tile who had an exorbitant amount of troops, okay? However, most of the time on tiles, people just have whatever the bare minimum is to gather on that tile, and you're going to win that battle easily anyways. This information is still valuable. Okay, almost done. We're going to real quick jump to my little paper over here where I have it drawn out for how you can visualize a troop formation set up. Alright guys, so you can see right here we've got the ultimate guide to troop formations. So I'm going to really quickly explain what we got here. What we want to do is imagine that our army is marching this direction, the direction that the arrows are going, okay? So up at the front, you're going to have your siege towers, okay? Your siege towers are going to kind of be interchangeable with your infantry, as in they're going to be killed first in. Usually they're going to fall against the trap. So that's going to be your T8s, your T5, your T3, your Doom towers, your Dragon Rams, all that kind of stuff. Next, we've got our warriors, which are T8, T6, T4, T2, those are going to die before your spearmen, which are going to be your T9s, T7s, T5s, that kind of stuff. So if the enemy manages to make it through destroying your siege towers and killing all of your infantry, you're going to then move on to cavalry. Light cavalry stands in front of heavy cavalry, so your T9s, T7s, T5s are going to die before your T8s, T6s, T4s, and T1s. Cavalry are going to stand in front of your bowmen. So for your bowmen, you've got your archers that stand in front of your crossbowmen. So your T8, T7, T4, T1s are going to die before your T9, T6, and T5s will, okay? Lastly, we have distant siege, which oftentimes, even in a loss, you're not guaranteed to lose your distant siege. They're so far back, launching catapults over the top, that oftentimes they're not even going to die at all, even if you lose. So these are way back here, launching attacks at the traps. Those are going to be your distant siege, your warwolves, your trebuchets, royal trebuchets, your T9, T7, T6, those units right there. So ultimately, this is what you want to take into consideration when you think about putting together a formation and what you need to do to attack and win against somebody else. This is how the troops line up. This is how it plays out in the battle. As you saw from the reports that I showed you, you're going to lose in this order. To the best of my ability, this is the most info that I've been able to collect and put together. If it's wrong, hey, sorry about that. If it's right, well, hey, at least we now know how to better form our troops, which is good because flipping King of Avalon, the actual producers, don't put much info out about this. Anyways, thanks always for watching, guys. Hopefully we'll see you next time. Leave a comment down below if you got any other additional information. Please share it, and we'll catch you next time, guys. Thanks.